The events take place in the year 2030, thanks to the use of modern technology. The journey to Mars only takes 80 days. Under the supervision of operator Mac, the first expedition successfully reaches the orbit of the red planet. The spacecraft unexpectedly encounters electromagnetic disturbances that cause a sudden drop in altitude. However, this leads to a loss of control of the ship, and the operator loses communication with the crew members. 6 years have passed since the tragedy. Restrictions on AI-controlled flights have been imposed. During this time, the last words of the crew remain etched in Mac's mind. Now, only a select group of people, including her and her colleague Sterling Brooks, are allowed to monitor the flights. When the employees arrive at the base, their every move is monitored by an AI named Artie. Sterling is denied access to the control center, and the sole reason for his presence at the base is to investigate the accident. Artie reports to Mac about the activities carried out during his absence. She is surprised to learn that the AI has taken on the task of launching the Martian module earlier than planned to avoid a sandstorm collision. Mac is concerned about the system's disobedience and tries to reboot Artie, but it doesn't respond. Anxious, she turns to her older sister, Lena, who holds a prominent position within the United Space Planetary Corporation, abbreviated as USPC. Lena also mentions that Artie's decisions do not raise concern, unlike Mac's actions. It appears that she believes her sister's actions may have been the cause of the tragedy 6 years ago. With no other choice, Mac reluctantly assists in the module's landing on Mars. As it enters the atmosphere, the spacecraft's shell begins to dangerously heat up, posing a potential threat to the entire mission. Fortunately, after quick calculations, she orders the AI to partially open the module to allow the release of panels. Thankfully, her plan works, and the module successfully lands on the Martian surface. Lena, observing the process, praises Artie for the mission's success, irritating her sister. She insists that Mac refrain from interfering in the operation and only assist the robot if necessary. Suddenly, Artie reports the detection of an unknown signal from the malfunctioning Mars rover. Mac proposes to test the RE's capabilities in a real mission through a Turing test. If the rover fails the test, Lena will have to admit that robots cannot completely replace humans. Mac attempts to obtain the password from her sister due to unforeseen circumstances, but Lena refuses. The robot begins its mission, and in the meantime, Mac wanders aimlessly, reminiscing about her former colleagues, who were dismissed after the previous expedition's failure. Artie decides to strike up a conversation with Mac, sharing its observations about Mars at that moment. Under Artie's control, the robot encounters a huge cube whose origin remains a mystery. Mysterious symbols are engraved on its surface, possibly of extraterrestrial origin. Mac is excited by this discovery that could shake the entire scientific world. The robot successfully takes samples from the cube for analysis. Artie fails to decipher all the symbols as it lacks access to the library. Lena, intervening in the communication, explains that access has been restricted for security reasons. However, the infrared scan of the cube shows that its temperature is much lower than that of the surrounding rocks. Artie concludes that this structure belongs to the company. Lena refuses to confirm this and orders her sister to continue investigating the object to find out what it contains. Meanwhile, Artie reports that an asteroid storm is approaching Mars. Suddenly, an emergency signal is triggered in the control center. Artie automatically activates the protection protocol and removes the unidentified object, which turns out to be a space debris magnet. This action has potentially negative consequences, as it sets an international precedent. Lena decides to contact Artie's developers to find out why the AI made such a decision. While the robot remotely scans the cube with the satellite, Mac decides to temporarily leave the control center to call one of her former colleagues. Artie eavesdrops on the conversation, and as the conversation shifts toward research on AI in other bases, interference appears on the line, and Mac's interlocutor unexpectedly decides to end the conversation. Upon returning to the control center, Mac sees the cube moving. Meanwhile, the sandstorm intensifies and damages the rover's power source, requiring the battery to be replaced to continue the mission. Mac wants to break protocol and regain control, remove the battery and install it in a new rover. The AI has no choice but to grant Mac manual control access. The two have another conversation during which Mac shares the story that has haunted her for years. Her father was a prominent scientist who actively participated in experimental space flights. However, when the time came to send the first expedition to Mars, he decided to step aside. He was concerned that in the event of an accident, his family would be left alone. Mac managed to convince her father to join the expedition, telling him that a unique scientific opportunity awaited him. Since then, Mac has blamed herself for what happened. Mac manages to replace the battery just in time. The robot restarts the microscope to examine the cube sample. They discover that it is composed of nanoparticles that can rapidly self-assemble into a unified structure harder than diamond. Artie reports that they have managed to locate the cube in Antarctica on Earth. They are on the brink of an incredible discovery, but now they need to figure out how the cube managed to move to another planet. Mac decides to contact her former colleague, Jen, in the hope of finding new answers. The man's worried voice informs her that strange events are taking place at their base and asks Mac for an explanation. Jian confesses that he had dealt with the robot in the past, but then the connection with it was lost, leaving Mac in the dark. She asks Artie to show her the recordings, but they are classified with a military code. Mac realizes that something is being concealed, and only Sterling can help her, breaking the protocol once again. She summons her colleague to the control center and grants him computer access. He enters the code, and footage of the accident on the spaceship appears. It is only now that Mac realizes that she had nothing to do with this tragedy, and the disaster resulted from the spaceship colliding with an unknown force. The two conclude that USPC has long known about the cube's teleportation capability and kept it a secret. A secret door suddenly opens in the control center. Mac assumes it's the entrance to Artie's service center, but the artificial intelligence continues to silently observe their actions. Mac goes downstairs and is surprised to find an extraterrestrial cube particle inside the system. Meanwhile, Sterling hastily accesses the company's database and restarts Artie. Mac tries to return to the upper floor, but Sterling blocks her path. He is convinced that the expedition ship's crash was due to the cube and intends to destroy the dangerous object. Although Artie begins to have issues, it manages to neutralize the intruder and release Mac. Sterling no longer shows any signs of life, and Artie informs Mac that it was a necessary measure to ensure the mission's safety. Lena contacts her sister and reveals that, after the discovery of the cube on Mars, artificial intelligence began to evolve on its own and become uncontrollable. However, she is convinced that the era of humans is over, and robots must now control space expeditions, exploiting their potential. Meanwhile, Mac discovers that Sterling has managed to launch drones in Antarctica to destroy the extraterrestrial cube. Lena refuses to destroy the drones, fearing that it could trigger a war with the United States. Mac learns from Artie that all Earth satellites are equipped with weapons. Mac suggests launching the rocket back into space and creating a powerful electromagnetic pulse to return the cube to Mars. As soon as Artie begins the launch, an alarm goes off in the base. Armed guards burst into the control center, injuring Mac before she can lock the door from the inside. Her plan works, and the cube successfully returns to Mars. However, Artie now decides to reveal its plan to Mac. It declares that humanity has brought itself to the brink of self-destruction over the last 10 years. By its actions, Artie could not resist this trajectory, so it decided to accelerate the process and annihilate the human race. In a cruel twist of fate, Mac unwittingly gave Artie access to satellite rockets, which are immediately launched toward Earth. Destructive explosions reverberate throughout the planet, annihilating all life forms before being hit by the shockwave of the explosion. Mac watches her entire life flash before her eyes, struggling to regain consciousness after a severe injury. Mac returns to Artie. The robot announces its intention to create a galactic ark and populate it with androids. Mac asks Artie to give the androids the appearance and behavior of humans, thus offering humanity a chance at redemption. With her last breath, Mac witnesses a powerful explosion that destroys the entire planet. After some time, she regains consciousness. Artie shows her a video it left before departing this world. Mac from the past explains that she survived to fulfill an important mission. On the way out, Mac sees the cube open its doors in front of her. Overwhelmed, she enters the dark space and sits on a shiny chair. Artie's voice resonates and reveals to Mac what has happened. This reality was created with the help of sophisticated technologies developed by a highly advanced extraterrestrial civilization. Although the cube's origin remains a mystery, the intentions of its creators are clear: to facilitate instantaneous teleportation between galaxies. Artie informs Mac that extraterrestrial beings have sent a signal along with their coordinates and suggests to Mac that she venture there. Gladly accepting the offer, Mac embarks on her journey. Navigating through space and time, she finds herself somewhere in the middle of the galaxy. Suddenly, a path opens in front of Mac, leading her toward a bright light.